All right, we are live. Dave Nour, great to see you. How you doing?
Always good to see you, Randy. I'm great, thanks. How about you?
Excellent, and very excited to have John McCarthy with us, otherwise known as Johnny Mac. John, how you doing?
Doing well, Randy. How you doing?
Excellent, thanks. This is episode 58. Nour, it sounds like we're probably dating ourselves. John's topic is the entrepreneurial mindset for all. I've known John, actually, I've not done the math, but it's got to be 35 years. Obviously, he's aged far better than I have. And he's been a consummate superstar originally back at EMC, has gone on, which we'll find out about, running some great companies, always very authentic, always wanted to be in the trenches. I've very much admired his ability to be strategic yet tactical, and has done a lot of great things, a lot of great places. And the fact that he is a Providence College alum and on their board, I will be polite and say it makes me think even more highly of him. So, John, welcome.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it.
And I want to put in a plug. We are sponsored today by Sendoso. They are the leading sending platform. They help companies send out by giving them new ways to engage with customers throughout the buyer's journey. By integrating digital and physical sending strategies, companies can increase the effectiveness of their existing go-to-market programs and improve their relationships with customers. So said otherwise, traditionally what we've done is swag, where you can't track it. They do a great job of being able to track in through Salesforce, other automated tools and all that. And amazingly enough, they've just did a raise at, I'm pretty sure it was 100 or 150 million at a valuation of $650 million. So, who would have thought swag could to get you there? So they may not like that comment, but anyway, it's crazy. So why don't we start off, John, maybe just telling us a little about yourself and your background.
Okay, appreciate it. Like you've said, I think we've known each other probably 35 years now. I started literally a week after I graduated Providence College in 1986. I think at the time we were in a little Natick strip mall, if you remember. One of the original 100. I was.
That's a retail. That's called the retail mall. So for those, you got to watch the words these days. So
okay, retail mall. I think I was part of the very first class ever, the official class of 13, a hire of 13 people, which was a big hire for EMC back in the day. And Randy, I believe you were already there, so you're one of the guys that I was trying to get out and emulate. So went through our little system, and out I popped in Atlanta, Georgia.
So John, after EMC, kind of take us through kind of the next several roles.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I never, maybe I didn't know what to expect going into my first job, but going into a company that went from $30 million to when I left, we were just doing over about $8 billion. And so in that roughly 14 and a half, 15 years, I kind of experienced everything from startup to pre-IPO to IPO to worldwide public company. So my first experience kind of gave me a plethora of exposures to all different type of backgrounds in organizations. Hence my theme of, you can be an entrepreneur regardless of what size organization you're in, if you keep that mindset. Mm-hmm. So the reason I bring up that background is when I went to look for my next opportunity and left EMC for no other reason than wanting to try something different, I had the mindset that I did not ever want to go anywhere again for that period of time, for 15 years. Never say never, because I'm on 13 years now at Mainline. So, but it took me many years to get to a point where, I would go in, fix up an organization, and basically market it to sell it. So that's what I had done. After leaving EMC in June of 2000. And I did that for, 8 years or so.
So one of the challenges, and we appreciate Keith jumping in, and now encourage others. So likewise, you're listening to, a couple of executives with a whole lot of, hands-on experience. So I'd encourage you to jump in with your questions. So John, one of the challenges in joining in any organization is, what does it take to think and behave like an entrepreneur, like an owner? What tip, what advice do you give the sales community, whether you're a BDR, again, in your 20s, just starting out, perhaps maybe somebody who's in the summer or fall of their careers? What does it take to really start thinking and behaving more like an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. And I wish there was a golden answer. Hey, do these two things, and this, you'll be set. And I think instead of being a patent answer, it's more of a mindset. If you find yourself in an organization and you're just moving along with the organization and becoming part of it, I hate to use a common theme, but a yes man, or hey, I don't know, I'd like to try to do that, but that's going to create a lot of issue and heartache for me to get done. I think that's a slow path to kind of losing that entrepreneurial spirit. So maybe the opposite way of saying it, if you want to keep your edge, if you want to keep your ability to be successful in an organization, regardless of size, you have to keep challenging yourself to say what you mean, to stand by a principle, to stand by what you think you need to do within an organization to further that organization, even if it's not a popular thought. And I think that really gets difficult for people throughout a job or out of a career. So for me, it's that staying fresh with, if you believe in something, you have to pursue it, even if it's uncomfortable within the organization.
You're gonna chuckle at this. Seidel and I've talked several times about how sales, marketing, the whole revenue engine has evolved since our days of selling. Like RevOps wasn't a thing back then. So I think you would agree that leadership has also evolved. Flip the coin on the other side. If I'm a CRO, if I'm a VP of sales, one part of the formula is bring my seasoning, bring the gray hair, bring the experience, bring the EMC days, and implement what I know. But I think you would also agree, equally valuable to listen to the new voices, listen to different voices that you, me, Randy may have not listened to in the past. What do leaders in these companies need to do to be more open to that entrepreneurial mindset that young BDR or that mid-career channel person could bring to the organization, to the team?
Yeah, it's another great question. And I think, and Randy will probably attest to this, we were exposed to this mindset early on that age didn't matter, gray hair didn't matter, no hair didn't matter.
Or no hair.
Yeah, there you go. So I beat you to it. It was really about, if you have something that you have the data on, he who has the data wins. So if you've done the research, if you have the data, if you have a sellable position and it's logical and you work through that, it doesn't matter longevity in organization. We were exposed to that early on in doing things at a very young age at EMC that most other companies were saying, they don't allow that here. You have to have 3 years in this, 5 years in this. And we were exposed to, if you were successful, the reward for success was more responsibility. And having that ability at a young age and being exposed to that, I think it makes it much easier for me today to have people that I rely on who are referred to in many circles as millennials. But man, they have such a, to your point, unique perspective and are so much more connected in many ways than some of peers, and I'll call us those with wisdom, meaning older people, that it is that balance. You have to kind of take both. So again, maybe because of my perspective of being given that opportunity at an early age, it's easy for me to follow that now in management of giving that same opportunity to those who are younger. And I'll use Mainline as an example. One of my most effective managers right now is by far my junior and the most junior on our team, but he just brings a whole different perspective and energy level than the rest of us.
Randy, over to you.
Yeah, great perspectives. And I think, having been there, ourselves, it gives us the ability to, I always say, treat people how you want to be treated, where I'd argue that, a lot of companies that, have this age hierarchy thing, definitely don't operate that way. So going back on the kind of entrepreneurial mindset, you probably have some statute of limitations is probably passed, so it should be okay. But you're running a great company, Storage Apps, got sold to HP, and you probably got to see, I'll say, some of the worst of some of that in that transition.
Yeah. So again, it's really difficult when you leave an organization like EMC that was successful in the time frame that they were, the growth that we experienced. One of the big thought process that you have when you venture out on your own was, hey, was I successful, or was I in the right place at the right time? And without that engine, am I really going to be able to succeed? And really, the only way you know that, and the only reason I decided, or the major reason I decided to go do something different with my life, is loved my years at EMC. Didn't think I would ever be able to replicate the amount of joy and education that I got from that first opportunity. And yet, when I had the opportunity to get involved with something that we were able to package and sell to another organization, and it took us all of 18 months to do that, from the day I walked into the day that we sold it, it was another learning experience of loved my 14 and a half years at EMC, but I also loved the opportunity to be somewhere for 18 months and sell an organization for $360 million. There was a lot of fun in that as well. So that kind of reignited this thought process of stay entrepreneurial. You don't have to commit yourself to 15 years or 20 years or 10 years. It's not about the time served, as long as you're making progress with whatever you're doing or with whatever process that you're working on at the time.
And I'm sure it was probably challenging, because if you think about the culture that you had, and then getting, they bought the company for the product and the people and revenue and everything else. So, I mean, that had to be a really tough challenge in terms of transitioning, especially for your team, right?
Yeah, going into, and, again, everyone comes at it from a different angle. For me, the prospect of going into HP after leaving EMC, and remember, HP was our dreaded foe for 15 years of my life. So the prospect of being purchased by a company who I used to compete against, no, there wasn't a lot of joy in my mind of, yes, that's where I want to go. And yet, when an organization is being offered X amount of dollars and there's an integration story told and what could be done together, you quickly get there of, I'll go see what it's like.
So, John, taking a step back, I'm not sure we learned as much about Mainline. What does Mainline do, and what market segment do you guys serve at Mainline?
So I'll back up. When I came in, let me see, it was almost 13 years ago. It'll be 13 years in March. And I didn't really know much about Mainline. I had a mutual friend who I reached out to, who said, John, geez, when I left CNT, a company that I was involved in, he said, I asked you because I was going to choose between two locations, Mainline being one of them. I said, good, give me an update, because I'm not really sure. I'm not overly familiar with Mainline. And the way Mainline was described to me at the time, they were about a $500 million IBM reseller. And when I say IBM reseller, 98% of every dollar they made was IBM. So again, going back to my background, EMC, if there was a single focus of our angst, it was IBM. So my first reaction to, hey, do I want to go to a reseller, and especially an IBM reseller, there wasn't a lot of interest there. When I found out it was owned by one individual, they had no debt. When I learned about more detail about the business, I said, sure, I'll meet him anywhere, anytime. Going back to that entrepreneurial thought is, I don't know what I don't know about this business yet, but the skeleton of what it sounds like it is pretty darn interesting. So that, again, was almost 13 years ago. The difference between us today versus then is we now are about 45% IBM, 55% other. Our second largest partner that we represent is now Dell EMC. But to give you an idea, in 2020, we represented over 240 different OEMs. So we start with the solution, start with our customer needs for that solution, and then we'll basically back into whatever we need to build around the solution to provide for our customer.
Any particular vertical or sector depth?
Yeah, so we did not start off with, hey, let's go concentrate on the financial vertical. And yet over time, if you go back, which we constantly do, and go through our data and apply logic to our data, yes, when we look at where we're successful, finance is a huge piece of it for us. So the financial vertical is by far our largest, followed pretty closely by the healthcare vertical. We do a lot around state and local, but we really come about it from a coast-to-coast presence where, it was started and are still founded down in planted down in Tallahassee, Florida. That's where our corporate office is. We only have about 50 individuals down in our corporate office. The rest of the 400 are spread across the United States, either in home offices, satellite offices, or at customer sites.
So one thing that Randy and I are always curious from leaders like yourself is beyond the obvious. Like we haven't been able to travel, there haven't been demo days or trade shows. What are some of the things you've observed in that seller-buyer relationship? What's worked for your team, and candidly, what hasn't in the last 18 plus months, almost 2 years?
Yeah, so it's almost there's two worlds in COVID, I feel, right? There's the sad underlying of what our nation and really the world has gone through, living through this, and my lifetime, the first pandemic. And there's a lot of struggle and almost guilt for those business-wise who has achieved what we achieved in 2020. And we've seen it across a number of industries, the bicycle industry, for example. Anyone who's tried to go out and get a bike during COVID knows how well that they've done in this period of time. Real estate, we all know the different parts around the country where real estate's off the charts. In our 33-year history, 2020 was by far our record-setting year. And I think a lot of things contributed to that. But to your question, David, one of the, I think, perfect storm type scenarios is we've had trusted relationships with infrastructure buyers who have been in place for, in some cases, more than 20 years. And when you're in this scenario and in supply chain issues and lockdown issues, one of the first things you do is you go to the trusted set that you're used to working with, and you rely on that partner of yours to deliver what you need. So for us, it was the perfect storm of we worked remotely. So we were not reconfiguring our sales force. We were not refiguring our company. We were already set up for this type of scenario. And then the buying pattern, it's almost like before a big storm, you go to your local bodega and what do? You stock up. There was a lot of that going on. And we were obviously there to cash in on that and obviously have our customers benefit because of our ability to buy for them.
What's your impression of the supply chain, and do you envision any reprieve coming from just this massive backlog we're all sitting in at the moment?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do not believe the worst has yet to come with the supply chain. The first major test that we will see is when you look at earning reports come the end of this year, and we see how many of those OEMs are actually able to provide the equipment, software, services, and hardware that's expected, and those who are not. We do expect that we will run into a fair amount of it. We think we've prepped ourselves and our customers as much as we can, but I don't think we've seen the full extent of it, and I do think that it will carry out at least into the first 6 months of 2022.
A couple follow-ons to some of your comments before, John. So first is in the virtual world. So I think I saw you did a virtual kickoff last February. How did that go? And what's your plans for kind of kickoff this year?
Yeah, so this is an interesting forum, and I understand this forum because we can tape this. People can go back and view it. It's something that it can be used over and over. I really am not a fan of trying to do a live forum virtually. We did what most organizations did and made the most of it. Our partners all stepped up. They contributed. We raise money every year through our partners in order to educate ourselves and plan for the future year. So probably for the first time in my 13 years here at Mainline, maybe it was a bit of a moneymaker. We reinvest that money on their behalf into our sales force. So I mean that in the most positive way. But I do not think it's a replacement for getting a distributed organization together. We really only do it about twice a year as an entire organization. So we bring in more than 350 people, usually somewhere down in Florida. This year, we're actually going to do it live mid-January. We're doing it in Jacksonville, Florida, having to jump through a lot of hoops, and there's a lot of plannings, and, knock on wood, we'll see where the world takes us. But we have every intention that we will be together in person in Jacksonville mid-January.
Great. Maybe you can get Tom Brady to come by and say hi.
There's the Brady dig again, just because I live in Atlanta. Thank you, Seidel.
Yeah. And then other following question from before, we were talking about being all IBM and then now bringing in Dell. A lot of channel partners, solution providers, VARs are, kind of dependent upon that vendor. So I'm sure IBM was not happy when you're doing that. So, my guess is you're also, we're strong enough to be able to focus on the customer as opposed to the vendor side, but kind of how did you navigate some of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randy. And I would say very early on, me walking into Mainline, there was almost this visceral reaction from some of the management at IBM of, we looked at his LinkedIn profile. We know his background. The CMC guy is going to come in and throw the company on its head, and we're going to be, at loggers with him. And I have to admit that was in the back of my thought process. Well, this is easy. I'm going to do a conversion pretty quickly and go to what I know and what I believe in. And I very quickly learned that there was this entire subculture out there that had and will continue to buy a big segment of what IBM has to offer. And based on, if you've spent the previous 20 plus years hiring plumbers, the idea to say, now I'm going to go turn them all into electricians doesn't always make sense. So like we were taught, when you get inside of business, spend your first 6 months learning about the business. Don't try to make changes right away until you understand what changes would benefit the organization. So it was a very slow process. And I must say, early on, I thought my biggest struggle would be convincing IBM that I had to diversify away from just selling IBM for their good and for the good and longevity of my organization. Because of the way that we did it and because of the thoughtfulness that we did it, I will say over the last 13 years, every single year, we have been more profitable than the previous year. That has not always been the case with revenue growth, but it has been profitability. So as we, change the car engine, as we're stayed on the highway, I think IBM began to see the benefits of, our business isn't being negatively impacted. They continue to show growth with the IBM product. The fact that we're able to grow other lines and enhance our customers' experience with Mainline was a win-win. So I will give IBM credit. They have not reacted negatively. I think they have grown in their thought process over the years. At one point, they referred to me as an extension of IBM, which I said, I have to tell you, I'm a mercenary by background. That's really not going to fly for us as an organization. There's plenty of money we can make together, but we're going to have to get there mentally. And to their credit, they did.
Oh, that's great. Good job.
So I think we got a question from Keith. John, what advice would you give us to sales folks having joined a young company with great tech, but in the very beginning of acquiring customers, fine-tune around a specific use case, focus on a particular vertical, others?
Wow, that's a great question. Keith, and you know this, I would love to say, there's only one thing you have to do. Randy's touched on this in previous conversations with David. If you've seen any of the previous 57. It's taken me 58, by the way, to get on. So, but I'm a big believer that if you don't have a use case, if you don't have value proposition, and you can't sum that up in 30 seconds, you're going to have a really difficult time. If you do have great technology, all you're trying to do is make sure you have that value prop. You figure out where the low-hanging fruit is. You present that value prop in that highest probability low-hanging fruit arena, and you go after it. If you win one, you win two. It's like the old house painting, right? Let me paint your neighbor's house, and I'm going to win the house next to me. So I believe that you have to have that value prop, and it happens in all different ways. I told Randy earlier, I'm familiar with Sendoso. I haven't used them at this point, but I'm a big believer in, if you're going to spend time, effort, and money creating relationships, track how you're doing that. Instead of just entertaining or sending gifts and thinking that's going to create relationships, I love the idea of follow up on it, understand why you're doing it, understand what the impact is. So for me, I think it's all about, if you're going to acquire that first group of customers, know the value prop, know what you're answering, know which ones that you should be going after and which ones you should avoid going after.
And that seems to make all the difference in the world, is delineating between where's a good investment of our time and effort, resources, and candidly where we have no business chasing people that are just not a right fit for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I believe that's half the battle. I can't tell you how many organizations I've been involved with that said, this is who we're going after. And I hear the value prop and I'm thinking to myself, it's a disconnect. It's a disconnect. You can go after that all you want. You can have the best team in the world. You have to know where your bread is buttered.
Yeah. And around
Seidel, on that note, why do you think that's such a big challenge for so many organizations? I mean, they're calling on people that are just not a viable buyer of that value proposition. Why is that? Seems like we want to keep banging our head against the wall.
Yeah, well, I think it's just a lack of common sense. I go back, not to keep talking about the EMC culture, but I just would call it. It was, if nothing else, it was just kind of common sense in terms of what you do and how you do it and what's logical, which I think is why a bunch of us young folks were able to do pretty well there. But I think it's it's leadership, right? Who's leading the company? What do they tell them to say? What do they tell them to do? Where are they pointing them to go? And if you think about the value prop side, I'll give a plug. We have Decision Link, who's a good sponsor of Sales Community, but they've got it's, I think, the leading and one of the only really value proposition platform companies. So we had John, and I had the benefit of Jeff Goldberg, rest his soul, who's really focused on the whole value proposition. And John, you can probably remember that the first meeting that we're in, who knows when, in the probably late 80s, and he came in and said, okay, you're going to tell people how you can help them generate revenue and save money and get a competitive advantage and the market share. And we thought, oh, that's stupid. You got to worry about speeds and feeds, right? But you quickly learn, hey, this is really what it's all about. So I think it's just kind of a maturity level of kind of what you do and how you do it. And then I'd go back on the Keith Milano question for any younger folks. I think where, again, early on, we had a lot of good process around, what is a fast start plan? What's your performance appraisal, performance management? There are a lot of objective profile and criteria to say, okay, what does success look like? Success is the number, but guess what? There's a whole bunch of other objective and subjective metrics that I think a lot of these younger folks, sellers these days, say, okay, hey, I sold or this or that. But management does not do a good job of saying, look, here's what it really takes to be an A player. So that way they can help coach them and develop them, not just if they're bottom performers, but I know John's a big fan of, developing top performers as well. Right, John?
Absolutely. We know this, Randy, because we were exposed to it. I try to recreate it. I also believe if you're going to have that entrepreneurial spirit in any organization, one of the most important things is make sure you have your godparents in a company. Make sure you have someone who is linked to your success, who's offering advice, who you're able to follow pro and con of their career, because I think it's absolutely paramount. And I refer to some of the times when we're talking about, are you selling into the right market? Are you using the right value prop for the right target? It's the equivalent of someone being self-aware. The older you get in your career, you start to realize, okay, what am I good at? What do I like doing? What do I need improvement on? And if you have that self-awareness, I think it really helps you be successful in what you're trying to do. There's that same amount of corporate self-awareness that internally to most organizations, you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit that can look yourselves as a corporation in the eye and say, are we on target? Are we going after the right area? We may ultimately want to everyone wants to be at the enterprise, right? Everyone wants to go big elephant hunting. But in order to get there, you have to go through those intermediary steps. And there's no shortcut to that, right? Whether you're a unicorn or otherwise, you kind of have to make sure that you cut your teeth on the right customer set before you get to where you want to go to.
I want to come back to this entrepreneurial spirit attributes, but we got a great question from Rob. How have you found the transition from the traditional VAR line card to one that contains an ever-growing as-a-service set of products and offerings?
Yeah, Rob, we don't see any of that. It's no. No, we're impervious to that. We're just cooking right along. No, it's a great question, Rob. One that I've stayed up a night or 100 thinking about. There's no easy answer. I think it's like any other twist that happens in technology. I would love to be reoccurring revenue and knowing what my stream looks like for 22 already and 23 and 24. But what we have found, like most things, we're change agents. A business never stays the same. It's like tending to a garden, so it's always changing. As a service is definitely a challenge inside the channel. I'll use IBM because they're still my largest at 45% of every dollar we sell is IBM related. And we've all seen the IBM marketing. It's, hey, we're going to as a service. We're selling cloud packs. We're selling the ability to, have reoccurring revenue. But as the middleman, as the channel, as the one with relationships, it has to make financial sense for us. It has to make long-term sense for our customers. So as much as I would love to embrace the as a service, it has to make sense across the board. Unfortunately, I'm the first one to give. If it makes sense for the customer and it makes sense for the OEM, I understand my long-term fate and therefore have to position us to do enough of both sides of that. But if I first jumped into, as many did over the years, 8 years ago, I was told you have to go fully to as a service or cloud provider right now, or you're out of business. Had I done it back then, I would have been out of business because I would have put all my investment behind an industry or a movement that wasn't quite there. We're seeing a lot more of it. We see how AWS is doing, how Azure is doing. Between the two of them, they're the giants. So we're learning a lot by it, but we're trying to do it where it makes sense. And we're basically led by our customers' decisions of, hey, we're going here. We'd like to do it with you. We're thrilled that they take us along for the ride.
We appreciate Rob and Keith and others jumping in with a question. I encourage our other audiences likewise. You got a lot of rich history and experience between John and Seidel, and I've done a couple of things as well. So please jump in with questions or comments that we can help along the way. So John, I'm a diligent note taker. I'm on page 2 of my notes. I'm capturing this formula for entrepreneurial spirit. I've got keep your edge and speak up. I got data, research, sell positions. I've got godparents of the company. What else? What else are those nuggets in how you define entrepreneurial spirit in a company?
So, I think one of the things, and again, even though I spent 15 years at EMC and I've been here at Mainline 13 years, I'll date myself, but I've been in the industry for 33 years. So I've been in, 7 different organizations. And I think part of the entrepreneurial spirit, especially on the leadership or management side, one of the first things that I think is paramount in any organization is you have to earn some trust, right? Especially if you're going to move around in organizations. If you're going to come into an organization and you're going to rely simply on your past, and yes, Randy and I have referred to EMC a couple of times, and there was a plethora of different lessons that we learned from EMC. Some I use to this day, some I know to stay away from, because as time evolves, some things are still relevant, some things still work, some are not. And it goes back to the earlier question that Randy was asking about, of listening to people of all different ages and inputs. Some are traditional and stay, some don't, and they run their course. So I think one of the things, if you're going to have that entrepreneurial spirit, you have to first start with earning that level of trust. Now, how you earn that trust, I think it's a personal relationship builder. So I think you have to have the ability to relate to people. But then I think you also have to prove that you have enough, call it background or chops in whatever you're trying to lead, so that people feel comfortable that, okay, he's a student of what we're doing. He's educated in the area that we're trying to be successful in. And he has a plan or a thought process of how we're going to go execute against that. Without that trust, without that belief of, hey, I can work with you. And I think most people in most organizations that I have been in will say, never do I try to lead with, do what I'm telling you to do. It's more about, hey, help me do this. I can't do it alone, right? I surround myself with people who are much more talented in many, many aspects than I am. But I think that's one of the keys to leadership, to the entrepreneurial spirit. Have that input from people you trust and have more knowledge than you do. Because without that, it's a one-man show, which in my case would not go very far.
For our audience, just to echo John's insights, Trisha Urick is a good personal friend, and she talks about research that she's done, and she's found that an estimated 95% of leaders believe they're self-aware, where in reality is actually less than 10%. So that self-awareness goes a long way, number one. Number two, in the whole relationship building side, the perception is you got to show up with all the answers. When you show up and ask for help in doing something, that vulnerability actually makes you real, makes you much more authentic. They realize that none of us have that, suit of armor on, and very few are going to be able to get anywhere alone. So that's a really great technique in building and nurturing really authentic relationships that come along with you and help you get things accomplished, not just trying to go at it alone. So kudos on that. Tom, we've got a question from Tom. John, I appreciate the insight. So Tom wants to know, what are the 3 most important things you measure when you stack rank OEMs that you partner with?
Wow, that's a great question. And I wish I had another line from my OEMs who could send donations, because I would change my order. So that's a really, really, really good question. And it's one of those questions I probably should spend 10 minutes noodling on before I answer it. But I'll try to give my blink reaction. I think first and foremost, coming into an organization that, again, was 98% of one vendor, probably the most important thing I had to overcome was, I am not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I am not going to pollute your long-term customer relationship with customer ABC that you're used to selling one product to, IBM. I'm not going to bring in another OEM, regardless of how much money we make on the deal, and put your customer in jeopardy. So maybe the most important is the OEM has to have a product that is going to help our customer and not hurt our position within the customer. Once we feel comfortable that a product is out there, and sometimes easier than not, hey, are you comfortable bringing Dell EMC in? Yes, obviously. They're a multi-billion-dollar player who has proven themselves over and over. I know them intimately, spent time there, know the executives there. I have no problem. So probably the next thing that then goes, that our mind goes to, okay, does it help our long-term cause? Are we putting ourselves in a better position or a worse position by pushing an OEM? And again, I'll use the Dell EMC case. In that position, I think it strengthens us. It allows us to show our customers that we do have a multitude of choices when it comes to storage. And storage, by the way, is our largest particular line of any line that we have. So we do consider ourselves expert in that. So I think it starts with the product and the company behind the product. Probably right behind that, can we benefit from offering that product to our customer set? And then probably right below that is if we do believe that we can financially further our cause and further our longevity, is do we have the technical ability to support and make sure that once we sell it, we're there then for our customer? Because again, it's all about longevity, not just one deal.
That's a great insight. Seidel, this next one is for you. So I'm just to start with you. Asmet wants to know, what advice would you give someone with a technical background to transition into sales aspect of technology? You've not only done this, but you've recruited some sharp people. Yeah.
Two words: sales community. Learn more and sell more. But I think the idea is be a student of the game. And I think the biggest misnomer is that, hey, successful salespeople are the ones that kind of wing it. But, from the background that we had, I mean, at the time you had like a Tom Hopkins was the book at the time. Now you have Medic, MedPick, the different sales processes, but you can learn. And I would argue that it's kind of more, sales is more like being an accountant as opposed to anybody that's just kind of, winging it. So there's definitely defined steps and process. And I think if you've got the desire, really anybody can sell.
Let me go to John. Yeah, John, how about you?
I wish I had the tech background. I still have my May 1986 notebook where I had to write out central processing unit is what CPU meant. So that was my background of my great tech knowledge. I have known many in my career who have made the jump from technical over to sales. And I will say the great majority who have stuck with it are some of the best salespeople that I've ever been associated with. Because to Randy's very point, once you are a student of the game, once you truly understand the benefit of what you're trying to sell your customer, it becomes all that more obvious to when there's a fit and when it's not a fit. I'd say the most trying part is getting over that hump of, hey, sales isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. But once you get across that hump and are able to use that background, and I'll point out a very great example of that. The founder and owner of Mainline, Rick Carney, was an IBM SE who realized that there was a need of I could move quicker, faster than IBM down here for my customers. And I'm going to go start a business that just does that. And I'll bring in salespeople and I can help them on the back end. So, it's done all the time. And I think if you have that desire, limitless as to where you could go with it.
Asman, I'm going to add my 2 cents of really double down on relationships. Double down on relationships with those that are already in tech sales and learn from them how to, what's helping them succeed. Double down on relationships with potential customers. Again, you can come out of it from a technology side of what else do they need? How else can you support them? And if you build and nurture relationships deep and wide, it's amazing. Opportunities tend to come your way. And you start to get calls and emails from people of, hey, I understood you to be looking for this. Here's somebody I want to introduce you to. Seidel does that all the time and found it to be a great enabler of that. So let's go to Jeff. Jeff wants to know, great to hear you. How do you get sellers who have primarily focused on hardware to shift to services and recurring revenue types of transactions?
That's a great question. I would love to take credit in the areas that we've been successful in getting outside just the infrastructure buys. But I would say that shift is happening organically. I would say the majority of our customers are coming to us with that question proposed internally and asking us how we can help fulfill that need of theirs. So I think the pressure is starting internally based on where the world is going. And there's enough thought process and call it community out there of, hey, if you're not have a foot in this world, you should have some portion of your business. And whether it's cloud or whether it's SaaS or whether it's off-prem, those opportunities seem to germinate inside organizations, and they're coming to us saying, what do you have in this realm? So I think it's happening organically, and it's part of the movement that's happening in our industry. Don't get me wrong. If you have an offering that's at the forefront, I think it's prime right now because I think everyone's looking into that arena.
Seidel, let me build on that question and ask you, what do you believe it takes to help technology sales professionals actually speak business? You and I have had this conversation where technology is really an enabler of an outcome, some sort of a business result after. And a lot of tech sales reps still just walk in, not just reps, but teams walk in and really still talk about the speeds and feeds. And let me tell you what my SaaS system does. And I don't care about that. What I care about is how do I create a better experience for my customers or reduce my acquisition cost or the business results I'm after. What do you think is going to take to really help some of these sales professionals not just revert back to their comfort zone of tech sales, but really speak business as well?
Yeah, I think there's two different things. One is just kind of whatever the training or process is. So again, whether you use a medic or medpic or you have force management doing the training, that kind of helps. But then to really answer the question is really saying is probably the training that gets rolled out. If it's not given to you, you got to figure it out. But say, okay, by having the XYZ product that makes the company perform better, what is that doing around revenue? Can their salespeople sell faster, better? Can they get more off a production line faster? If it's a drug company, can they help a drug come out somewhat faster, which then helps the top line? And then if you think about the cost, goes back to the value selling comments we talked about before. Business is pretty simple. It's okay. You want to generate revenue, you want to save money. Okay, so is it a cost savings things where maybe you can get rid of some bodies or reallocate some bodies, which then helps the bottom line. And if you lever those two bits and pieces, then you impact the profitability aspect. So it's a lot easier. It's a lot harder said than done for sure.
John, anything to add to how do you get more of the tech sales professionals to speak more business?
No, it's a great question. I think it's baptism by fire. If you're really going to understand a customer, you can't just understand one portion of the customer. You can't stay in the glass house, in the infrastructure, in the data center. If you don't truly understand your customer's business and what they're trying to achieve, and I hate to sound corny, but it comes back to this entrepreneurial mindset. If you don't understand what the goal is, how can you sell and help reach the goal? So you may be answering needs and buys and filling that with something that you have, but you're only going to take that so far. If you understand the true goal and where the organization that you're selling to is trying to get to, it opens up your opportunity across a full spectrum of what you can then deliver on. So I think it's absolutely a necessity to know it.
As a practical matter for every sales professional listening this or even leader watching this, that the analyst calls are a treasure trove of what leaders talk about in terms of their strategic priorities and where they're going, how they're going to get there, what their challenges are, what their obstacles are. So if you manage, lead, have relationships with publicly traded companies, they have analyst calls. Those should be on your calendar. Those should be things you attend. Those should be transcriptions that are publicly available you read through, because they're amazing in helping you understand, as John alluded to, their business and their challenges, whether it's supply chain or talent or go to market, on and on and on. They'll talk about, and they'll get different executives to come on those things and talk about their challenges and opportunities. So let's switch gears to, here's a good one. John, how would you describe your leadership style? What attributes do you believe separates good from great leaders in today's enterprise tech sales landscape?
That's a great question. It's hard when you're doing a self-analysis, right? I was speaking to and this will tell you he's a longtime dear friend. He said to me the other day, "You realize you have a huge ego, right?" And I was like, "Wow, that's really nice of you. I appreciate that, Ronaldo, Randy." And I said, "That's really interesting." I would say majority of the time, I'm filled with self-doubt, right? I constantly feel like I'm one step away from faking it. But I think that type of thought process helps you in the long run. If you never really believe that, hey, I have this figured out and I have a process that works, I think you're constantly open to change. So I believe that my leadership style, a lot of it comes again from what I was speaking about earlier. I don't want it to sound corny, but it is a team approach. It is staying open and honest with how do we go about achieving this. I will put up to, most of the organizations that I've led, and I've said this to my current team, go ask people of my background, go ask people that I've managed before. I think I am a good listener. I think I am an honest leader as far as, some things that we have our hands around and I think we're going to be successful in. In other areas, we're challenged and we have challenges. I have answers to some of them, I believe. I don't to others. But part of what we've learned is, we control what we can control, stay relevant as much and as long as we can stay relevant, and be prepared to act on the new opportunities that present themselves. That doesn't mean I always have to have the answer for every challenge that we have. And I think a good leader will admit that. And, trying to put forth a good face, maybe that comes across as a big ego. I'm trying to make sure that people understand that I'm approachable, that I am not infallible, that I try to lead as a team and as a group effort. And again, it's about winning over that trust and making sure people want to be in business with someone that they want to spend time with.
Seidel, I'm going to ask you the same question. You know a lot of friends, a lot of leaders from the EMC days through HP days that have gone and do amazing. We've had a number of them, including John on these podcasts and these live sessions. Can you comment on 2-3 traits that have really delineated the great ones from those that are doing okay?
Yeah, and I'll be specific with John because it was going to be one of my follow-ups. So I'd say I'd categorize a lot of what he just said in terms of being authentic, right? So authentic is being open, you're susceptible, you're happy to give it. It's great that somebody gave him the feedback and then he's open to it, even though it was Bob. And then from a coach perspective, I think, always be coaching. So yeah, you're a learner, but if somebody's coming to him with a problem or opportunity, the way and style and mannerism that and I think the best leaders actually coach is vital. And at the end of the day, number one is, beating the number. So he's maniacally focused on whatever those objectives are around revenue, profitability, GP, anything like that. So I'd say those are 3 great attributes overall that would also equate to John. And before I forget, I want to bring it up. I think another great attribute, which I've always admired you for, is in my book, we do the plug, your go-to sales advisor. He and others had some great tidbits. And John's, your topic, John, was around organizing your time and schedule, which you've always done that really well. Can you share some of those thoughts with the audience?
Yeah, it's kind of funny again, because everyone has a different approach. And when people say, hey, what do you do well and why? My first reaction, I don't take compliments well, right? So, and I've really had to work on that to just say thank you if someone gives you a compliment. So when someone asks you, hey, say what you do well, it's not my natural tendency to say, oh, let me tell you what I do well. Because again, my thought process is, being vulnerable, I don't think you can fake vulnerability. I think people sniff it out. But I think when you are vulnerable, it allows people to say, okay, maybe he is going to listen to my input. I happen to, Randy, when you asked for little quips or thoughts of our past, things that seem minor but had a major impact. Again, the little passage I had in the book was during I was, all of 22 and having to go to a sales meeting, and you had to fill different times. And I walked by this room that said Franklin Planner. And the very concept that stayed with me was, if you can clear your mind of all the little minutia by writing it down and being organized and leaving your mind available to think big and to think about business and strategy and impact that you can have on a business, then you're using the small amount of our brains that we use anyway for the right thing. Now, that's such a small little example, but it changed my life. I write everything down, as I know you do, Randy and David, by your note taking. You're obviously a student of the game as well. I have stayed with that of write it all down, stay organized for the purpose of, I don't think I'm better than anyone else, but it allows me then to use my thinking for much more interesting things that allows me to apply it back to what I'm trying to do. And if I feel like I'm already a step away from faking it, I need every one of those cerebral cycles around how we're going to be better as an organization or how I'm going to be better as a leader.
Yeah, we got a great question from Jesse. I want to congratulate Jesse and his wife, two-day-old daughter. So look at the commitment to the sales community. Jesse's asking, should marketing and sales be all under one organization?
That's a great question. I think my blank answer to that, and I'll do this based on my history, is there is no right answer to that. It's distributed versus consolidated. Many times in an organization, we've been, hey, we're going to distribute this. Here's why. We're going to consolidate it. Here's why. I've had sales organizations with marketing. I've had sales organizations separated from marketing. I think it really depends on where you are in your journey, who's on the team. So there's too many variables that I think come into play to have that one patented answer of yes, it has to be part of sales, or no, it has to be separated. I really think, and it's not a cop-out, but it really does depend on the organization.
Before we give Randy Seidel the last word, this is one of my favorite questions. John, we're going to need a fun story about Randy Seidel. You guys have known each other for a whole bunch of years. As a reminder, this is a PG-rated show, but we love to hear where Randy's been and some of the things you guys have done together.
Yeah, so, look, there's so many stories. Again, I've known Randy for so long. I'll give two interesting things. So Randy, and you mentioned this earlier, David, I'm a big networking fan. And I network for the pure joy of networking. There's nothing that makes me happier when I introduce someone personally, professionally, where they then create some type of relationship outside of our relationship. Nothing makes me happier of, hey, I started that. Randy's been not only a student of this, but a leader in this for many, many years. So leading into sales community, this is just one step for Randy that's along the line of what he has always done. So putting it to good use and creating this opportunity for others to benefit from it doesn't surprise me at all. It goes down to, what Randy has done his entire career. An interesting story is very few people know how I found Mainline. And it happens to be the very person who called me and introduced me to this opportunity was Randy Seidel, who actually had met Rick Carney, had a conversation with Rick Carney, was tied up in something, but mentioned, hey, you should probably have a conversation with John McCarthy. Again, my original reaction was, I don't know what Randy's talking about. I'm not doing a reseller, and I'm certainly not doing an IBM reseller. 13 years later, I stand here because of Randy.
That's awesome. It's a testament to who he is and how he's wired. Yeah. So on that note, I want to definitely give Randy the last note. Just as a FYI for our audience, in a bit of a clever approach, I've actually gone back and captured some real nuggets from our 50+ conversations, including this one with John on 10 attributes of great global sales leaders and sales organizations and I want to drag Randy out to come speak at your next SKO about what these amazing leaders do. So get in touch if we can help with that. But I think it's definitely some fantastic nuggets from all of our interviews that we want to bring to your organization. So Randy, let me turn it over to you for your closing thoughts.
Great. Thanks, John. Yeah, you've been fantastic. So just to fully fall on the sword, so I'm the idiot who passed on the opportunity. So we were negotiating, and I was at Sun, and Sun was getting acquired, and that was going to be a good hit and everything else. So, God bless you. I mean, you have done genuinely a amazing job, really pivoting the company and growing, and huge success there. So love the participation from the audience. Look forward to having everybody coming forward. We're actually going to be taking a bit of a break until beginning of January, but certainly people feel free to go back, take a look. For those that are members of Sales Community, thanks so much. If you're not, please go check it out. And certainly want to thank Sendoso, who's the leading gifting and sending platform company out there. And Nour, as always, it's been great to have you back. So Tucker, also behind the scenes, is the one that we couldn't do this without. So Tucker, thank you so much. And as Nour said, Jessie, very, very pumped for you. She's adorable. And Jessie's huge LinkedIn, so I don't know what's appropriate in terms of sharing with pictures or whatnot. So anyway, John, all the best. Great holidays, and really appreciate it.
Thanks again, guys. Very much appreciate it.